Welcome. This is David Boles, Human Meme. Today's topic, Idyl in a Willys-Knight. Joseph Baldwin poetry. Joe Baldwin was one of my heroes. He was self-admittedly old and withered by the time I met him as my first playwriting teacher at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I was a first-year freshman. Joe Baldwin always joked, but sometimes seriously, that the chair of the Department of Theater Arts and Dance wanted to push him down the stairs to force him into retirement. Joe Baldwin was funny and Southern, and he did not fit in Nebraska all that well. But all his best qualities were festooned upon the way he drawled out the punchline of his jokes. Joe Baldwin was immensely funny and kind and generous. And Joe Baldwin was a fan of mine. If that's possible for a university professor to react that way to a freshman student. But all these years later, I can't think of a better word to use. He read my work out loud in class. He prompted and promoted my work to the theater department. He celebrated me. Joe Baldwin helped me get my first full-length play, A Stone's Throw, produced at UNL as an undergraduate, and you may read that play online today at Boles.com. And you can also read about the 30th anniversary of the controversial show at bolesblogs.com. Joe Baldwin was a teacher and a comedian and an influencer and a stoic defender, but above all else, Joe Baldwin was my friend. And Joe Baldwin was an incredible writer of plays and stories and books and poems. And he told the best stories. And today we're going to share some of his best work with you right now. These poems were originally published in David Boles' blogs, located at bolesblogs.com. Squirrels, published October 23, 1997. Even when sitting on the lawn, squirrels seem perched, clinging as they do to ground as if it might sway in the next wind. Never are they less than tense, sinuously sleek. Always poised for the quick dart, the lunge, or skittering flight to safety. Never a wasted motion. Witness especially the flickering twitch in a false direction before the true thrust. Such feints are of most value. They make fools of cats who, to salvage something, break off the chase, subside, and look regal and uncaring. 30 September. Published October 23, 1997. On the last day of the month, October came in 6 hours early, bringing a sweet wind out of the north, running before rain. Spreading out over the plains was a blue-gray sea for sky, with surprising white flecks of foam before it. Smoke-puff clouds scraped their bellies on the hills to the west, which, a child out of the mountains, I once scorned as lying too low, now my own and loved. Unleashed winds blew eagerly about our valley, with the wayward motion that was to be the carrier of leaves. Autumn spirits announced the end of sultriness, with a delight akin to that of the rebirth in spring. Soon afterward, trees and people began clothing themselves in red and brown. Idyl in a Willys-Knight, October 23, 1997. Other roads followed the level ground, but this one turned a corner to the right, around a farmstead and its dark red buildings. And the car strained over to the left, then centered on the road to follow up the gentle slope of a small hill, then dropped down on the other side into a quiet valley, where good people were sitting down to supper after prayers. Idly pecking hens stepped about near the old, staunchly built barn, and a collie came sniffing eagerly to the gate, his brown eyes welcoming. One tanned youth came striding in late from the field and sprang up the back steps and buried his face in water, his hands scooped up from the basin. One more long look. Then the Willys, at the pressure of my foot, lifted its nose and pointed away toward mountains that lay like a purple cloud bank on the horizon. One of the tiny lights set in that loftiness marked where we should find shelter for the night. Which one we'd discover in good time. The steady climbing toward that promise was now, for the long while, peace enough and fulfillment in itself. December. Published October 23, 1997. A raw wind bent trees, blew through people and houses, making them skeletons of the moment, flesh reviving after an interval, but flesh discouraged, unsure of itself. Siding, stones, bricks intact, opaque once more, but now open to question. That wind, while it endured, was like a stark insight, exposing not the eye, but to intuition, second sight, the structure of things, their intricate interlacings of girders, timbers, and bones, beautiful in design, beautiful even in accidental or whimsical patterns of jointure and bracing, but, alas, revealing which supports and linkages were doubtful, which joints arthritic, subsidence, crumbling, and decay, their coming, always expected in due course, was indicated in certain areas as imminent. Wind, itself transitory by nature, makes sojourners of us as well, but also brings, mingled with that chill of dread, a slender thought of soaring, an almost hope of ranging free of attachment, cured of the temerity of substance, sobriety of weight. Private Soldier. Published October 23, 1997. I am one among the platoon they sent to seize that itinerant preacher, rabbi, magician, or whatever he was, and being pushed forward, first to lay hand on him. Not the sort of thing I'd do on my own. But you know how it is with a squad. Fellows pressing all about you. Well, before I knew what was happening, some wild peasant among them had whipped out his sword, and there, in the dust, was my ear, before anything started to hurt. I mean, blood from it was spreading and making dark mud, and the side of my head felt cool, as if a breeze had touched that side and not the other. Up this leader of theirs stood, he the cleanest looking of them, and lifted his hand toward me, and may have mumbled something, I don't know, I was just coming around, as you might say, and raised my hand and felt my ear in place where it ought to be. Meanwhile, this leader of theirs was giving the swordsman a proper talking to. And after that he put himself into our hands and went along with us to the chief priest. The thing is, the amazing thing, you see, is none of my mates ever knew my ear was off and made no mention of it. I suppose they thought the wild one had made a pass at me and missed, and I didn't want to say anything to them then, not just then, till I had a chance to think it over. Maybe it didn't happen after all. I'll never know. But my hearing's been different ever since, in ways I can't put my finger on. If he was a magician, he was an odd one, don't you know? He let them nail him to a cross, and there he hung, so they tell me. I was on a pass to my home village by then. Who'd waste leave time in Jerusalem with all those mobs and Roman soldiers making a mock of us and getting all the girls? Fontaine Fox, October 23, 1997. He drew cartoons that strangely moved me. The jests were in the foreground. The landscapes they were set in stretched on beyond them, wan and deftly true. The awful ordinary. Streets were shown that had pushed too far from the curb, curbing set in, lamps on poles with nothing to shine upon but expanse of ground. A single fire hydrant poking its dome above a cluster of weeds. The corner store built and then abandoned in this waste. The end of track, where motorman go out and switched the trolley pole around, then ate his lunch. These scenes I knew as a child. America, in many places, was then a land of vacant lots. I saw them from train windows and from the trolley car, and brooded over them, not having then formed any opinion, only bemused by a world unfinished. Fur Flight, October 23, 1997. I saw a squirrel launch himself from a perch 10 feet above where the trunk of my elm forms to a V, and leapt across the other branch, landing only a foot or so below his departure point, inside such a quaint furball. What suppleness, lithe grace, how he gathered, flickered across the space, then landed again a ball, and then slimmed out again to scuttle along a limb. Could this be only a search for food, such a ballet? I must believe he did it for joy alone. His flight, for flight it was like words without music, the words making me hear a music of my own. Similarly, he wore, for a moment, splendid and indescribable wings of my imagining. Thank you for listening. Be a human meme.